People are doing a lot of creative things with bird cages these days, and this is my favorite. I'm Tiffany with socalgardenwiz.com, and this is How to Make a Birdcage Planner. To make a bird cage planner is really easy. First thing you need is a cage, and for today I've selected a cage that comes off or is removable from the base. I like using a solid base because that way I don't have to worry about lining it with moss and the soil will stay in. But because this is separated, it makes it easier to plant, but I want to be able to hang it later, so I've drilled holes on each corner, on the bottom and on the side, and one hole in the bottom for drainage. I don't want my soil to go running through, so I need something to put on the bottom of this so soil doesn't go running through that hole. And what I like to use is just a regular old paper towel. You can use screen, you can use a coffee filter. First, you're going to need some sort of a plant. A lot of people go for something like this. It's smaller, it looks like it would fit better in here, depth-wise, soil. The problem is, it's not going to be very long and it's not going to go very far up my cage. There's a secret that designers and people who do floral work know, and that is to use a bigger plant. This is a 6-inch potted hanging ivy. This ivy is considered a 3-inch. This one costs about $5, this one costs $10. But watch the difference. I can just take these little tabs off of here, or you can cut them. Either way is fine. And then I'm going to take my plant out. Now most people think it seems crazy, like there's just no way this is going to fit into here because the soil depth is so much bigger. But there's a secret, and the secret is that if you separate an ivy plant and you kind of part it, like parting hair, you'll see that it's actually several little plants. And you can actually pull this apart and have individual plants. What I'm going to do is just sort of untangle these a little bit. And I'll just start from one break between two of the plants. And I'm simply going to squeeze my fingers in and gently pull. Pop. See this? Now I can pull this apart and I'm going to have an individual ivy plant. You're just going to keep pulling them apart until you have probably 5 to 6 plants. When you're pulling these apart, you want to keep as much of the roots on as you can and as much of the soil on the roots as possible. I just pulled this one out of the other one and there's a nice long root. I've still got a nice good sized root ball here. So now you can see I have about 5 little individual plants. And what I'm going to do with these, set these aside for a minute so you can see better. I'm going to take each individual plant and look for the ones that have the longest running stems. This one's pretty long, and that one. And I want to put my 4 longest stems in the corners. Here's why I'm putting the longest ones in the corners. I want them to be able to go as far up the corner bars on my cage as possible. Remember how deep the soil was and how deep the root ball looked? Now that I've got them separated, I can actually lay it on its side a little bit. And I can do that for each one of these, making sure that the roots will be nice and covered, because I really don't have much room up beyond these edges. And now that I've got them each in here, I'm actually looking for where my holes were. And the holes are on the sides. So I'm going to have my plants go towards the front here, and towards the back this way. This is going to make my life easier. Here's why. I'm going to take my wires and stick them up through the bottom of each hole and then in through the side. And then I'm going to take them and wrap them over the edge. The reason for that is I'm going to need these wires later to hold the bottom of my cage on. But right now, I just need them out of the way and safely in place. I'm going to go ahead and do that on all four corners. So I'm just pulling my last wire in, and I'm going to press it up over the edge. What's great about using wire is that it'll just fold itself and hang onto the edge of the planter for you, and then you don't have to worry about it. So I've got my 4 plants, 2 facing front, 2 facing back, holes are on the sides. I'm going to take my 5th one, and I'm just going to place it right in the center. I'm going to use this one ultimately to kind of cover everything up so that I have a nice neat base. Now that I've got my plants in place, what I'm going to do next is just add some soil. I'm going to put the soil in each corner first. I like to do that so that the plant isn't resting just right up against the edge of the planter. I wanted to have a little room to have some soil before the roots touch the edge of the planter, just in case it's really hot. Now, in terms of what kind of soil, I'm using potting soil. You don't want to use garden soil or garden mix. You want to use potting soil. And the reason for that is because potting soil is so much more nutrient rich. I've got all my potting mix in here. It's all pushed in and all my roots are nice and secure for now. The next thing I'm going to do is put a layer of moss over it. Part of the reason for the moss is when you put moss on top, you keep the soil in. If you're trying to water with a hose, sometimes the soil will splash out, and we really don't have much margin for error here. It's a very narrow, really narrow depth for soil. So we want to make sure we keep every bit of it in. The other thing moss does is it helps hold moisture in, so you don't have to water it as frequently. So what I'm going to do is take some of my moss and put it in a bucket of water. And here's how I do it. Just take a handful, stick it in. And then I'm going to wring it out a little bit, just because it's a little bit easier. And I'm just going to start placing it on top of my soil. And I'm going to do this several times until the whole thing is covered. So now I've got my peat moss completely covering my planter. What I like to do at that point is just sort of go in and tuck it in on all the edges so that it looks nice and you don't have a lot of loose scragglers hanging out. And then I like to keep the moss looking neat on top also. And here's the trick for that. These are called Florist greening pins. We used these all the time when I was a florist. They look like little staples, the little S shape in them. And that allows you to push down on them without hurting yourself. So I've got a couple spots where my moss is high, and I want to just press that in, and it'll help keep my moss kind of more compact, a little neater, a little less shaggy. And if for any reason these are too deep for your soil, and if you push it down, you're hitting the bottom of your pan, it's real simple. You just put them in at an angle. So now my moss is pretty tidy, and we're getting to the point where we want to use this plant that's been stuck here kind of in the middle. This one isn't going to climb up any of the bars. By the way, I like the cages that are more open and have fewer bars. If you are using a cage with a lot of bars, just make sure there's enough room between the corner bar and the next bar that you can comfortably wrap an ivy around without tearing all the leaves off. If you're wondering what kind of ivy to use, the smaller leaf the better. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my little ivy that was in the middle, and I'm just going to kind of spiral it around here. See, I don't want to fight it too much. And I'm going to take my Florist greening pins and just go right over the stem to keep my ivy in place. This way I can kind of use the ivy to cover the moss, so I don't see so much moss. I don't see any dirt at all, and that's going to help cover this up. Now I'm going to look at my corner ivies. I've got nice long stems here, but I've got a lot of short ones, and they happen to be close to the base. So what I'm going to do is take these, and I'm going to work them into the base using my floral greening pins to hold them down as well. Now that I've got most of my extras pinned down, what I'm going to do is take my 4 long ivies, my corner ivies, and I'm just going to coil them up. and I want to get them out of the way of the edges. The reason for that is I'm about to put the cover on, the cage part on, and I don't want to crimp any of my ivies, my beautiful long ivies, underneath the edges of my cage. So I'm going to pull all this into the middle. You can see this is really messy. And I'm just going to take this and set it on top, making sure not to pinch any of my ivies. You don't have to worry about trying to shove it in or connect it to anything yet. You just want to make sure that you get all your plants and leaves out from underneath. Now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is go through and look at each corner where I have those wires. And what I want to do is put one wire on the inside of the cage and leave one on the outside of the cage. And what I mean by the cage is the bar at the bottom here. I'm going to do this all the way around. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to attach this cage to the base with these wires. That's what we put them in for earlier. But I want to be able to shove this cage down in there a little bit. Now that I've got the wires on each side of the base, I'm just going to press down nice and firmly. You can actually move some things out of the way a little bit if you want. I'm going to go back in and twist each one of these over that bar. Now I'm on my last bar. I'm going to continue to twist this last section. And with each one of these, what you'll want to do, because we like things pretty, we're going to take them and shove them kind of down into the dirt, because I don't want to see those wires. And then I'm just going to take a little bit of the moss that I already have in here, sort of pull it up over so that there's no chance you'll see any of those wires. Now that I've got all of my wires attached to my cage, I can actually lift it and I can hang it. It's nice and secure. The next thing I want to do is make it pretty. And here's how you make it pretty. Just gently uncoil your ivies, whatever's on top, just sort of work it out. There, all my ivies are out. And you can see that I have some coverage in here with the ivies that I've already pinned. What I'm going to do is take each corner and I want to lay my ivy down kind of close to the corner again. What I'm going to do now is a trick that a lot of people miss. And that is I'm going to secure the ivy right here at the base. Right at the base of the bar where I want it to go up. And the reason is it gives me a nice clean edge there and keeps it from having the ivy going up. I want the ivy to come down, or not even come down. I want the ivy to be level and then go up. I want a nice 90-degree angle in here because that's the cleanest look. So I'm going to pin it, and it might take a couple pins to get this nice and secure, and that's okay. You can go more than one direction. Think of it like using bobby pins to keep a tricky bun in place. Now that I've done that, I'm going to take my ivy, and this is more than one stem, but that's fine. I'm just going to wrap it around, kind of tightly, but not too tightly, because I want to make sure I have enough to get all the way up at the top. And I want the last one underneath so that it doesn't unravel. So there's one, and you can see how I have a nice clean edge here. My ivy isn't sloping up at all. You're going to do the same thing to all four corners. Now if you have any last minute tidying up to do, a few loose leaves, a few loose ends that really would look better if they were pinned down, go ahead and do that. When you do that, it helps the whatever part of the ivy that you're pressing against the moss, it helps it root, so it'll actually set down roots and then you won't have to worry about the pins so much. And there you go. Now here's another trick florists and nursery people do to keep their plants looking fabulous. Once this is all done, if you have any leaves that don't look as great as you want them to look, you can just reach in. I have one here that's got a little dead spot on it. Pull it off. Now it looks perfect. So there it is. This is my planter, my birdcage planter. You can put it inside, you can put it outside. I can hang it now. I can set it on a table. You could decorate it even further. Use your own imagination. Maybe put a little bird swing in here with a little, artificial bird, maybe a little butterfly on one of the bars, or even a nest down in here with little eggs in it. Do whatever you like that suits your style. I'm Tiffany with SoCal Garden Wiz. We'll see you next time.